everybody, happy Wax on Wednesdays. Today I wanted to show you exactly what is my favorite brush to use for encaustic painting, and you might be surprised to know that it's not an expensive hake brush or an expensive encaustic brush that's special for encaustic. It's actually a cheap chip brush that is so inexpensive and so versatile when it comes to painting encaustic. Stay tuned and find out why. When painting with encaustic, you have to use a natural bristle brush, and that's because we heat the brushes up, they become very hot, and synthetic brushes will melt when you put it in the hot molten wax or you leave it on the hot plate. Natural bristle brushes are a must when encaustic painting. There's a bunch of options when it comes to natural bristle brushes, and each different type is going to bring you a different effect on the encaustic surface. The reason that I love the cheap, inexpensive chip brushes is because they bring so much texture, and you can use it to apply your base coats, you can use it to apply texture, you can use it all the way through. Hog's hair or chip brushes come in a variety of sizes. I got this entire pack of 36 brushes that you saw in the beginning for about $10-ish at a local hardware store. So they're very inexpensive. These are the 2-inch, and I find that that works good for multiple, you know, maybe up to a 16 by 16. After that, you might want to go a little bit bigger. You can get 3-inch, 4-inch. They come in all different sizes, readily available at any hardware store, and oftentimes also at your local craft store. So there's a variety of different types of bristles that you can use. This one is a hog's hair chip brush. This one is a goat hair brush. The goat hair is a lot softer, surprisingly, than the hog's hair bristle brush. And you can see how soft that is, and so the wax is going to go on slightly differently with each brush. So I've added a couple coats here of encaustic medium, 2 coats of clear medium to a 12 by 12 board, and I'm going to show you, I added the clear in order to show when I add color how each of them go on, the soft versus the stiffer hog's hair bristle brush. Now, I also noticed that when you look at bristle brushes, people say, how do I know that it's actually a hog's hair bristle brush? All it has to say is natural, and you know that that's what it is. I find that companies nowadays completely steer away from saying exactly what kind of hair is in the brush, and I've noticed that especially over the last couple years. But if it's a chip brush, traditionally a traditional chip brush is made of hog's hair, and also if it says 100% pure bristle, hog's hair. This one I've gotten for years, and it actually used to say goat's hair. Now it doesn't, it just says natural. We'll go with that, but it's a softer brush. So I've added a couple of coats of the clear encaustic medium, and I'm going to add a color now. Let's just add some white, and I'll add one line with the natural bristle brush and one with the softer goat's hair. What happens with the softer goat hair brush is it absorbs and sucks up that paint a lot more. So you could see it took me a lot more dips into the paint to get one straight line across, but it was a pretty wide brush, so it was still a pretty good swipe. But here you can see almost no Such a smooth application, almost no brush strokes at all here. Almost none. Some tail at the tail end as the brush wouldn't give up any more paint. Then you've got a little bit here at the bottom. But other than that, a pretty smooth application. Where on the hog's hair side, you've got all this great brush stroke texture that can easily be built up in an accretion method. And I find that building it up with the softer encaustic brushes or the goat's hair natural good softer brushes, it takes a lot longer to build up in that accretion method than it does with a good old-fashioned chip brush. So let's try to build up some texture with both of those brushes. And of course, for a dry brush texture, we're gonna want pretty much a dry brush. So I'm gonna wipe off the brush as much as possible. And just to begin to add that texture. And what do I find with the soft brush? Well, the soft brush, I find A, that it shed a little bit. B, it is getting some good texture, some good textures going on, but it solidifies a lot quicker than the hog's hair. And I'm not actually sure why that is, but I'd have to re-dip and go back in, and it just takes a lot longer to build up that texture. Now let's try the chip brush. Again, I'm gonna go in and dip my brush, wipe it off for just a second, and then go in and start building that texture immediately. You start to see this great texture build up. Look how fast that was. And the chip brush will keep giving and giving of that paint. I usually can go on for about 2 minutes per dip with this brush, with it still continuing to build up that texture. I can also be a lot harsher with it going back and forth than I can the soft brush. It's just more hardy, more durable, and it'll still go back into shape almost no matter what kind of beating it takes. But each of these, you can see it's still going. Each of these lines had one dip, just one dip into the wax on both of these brushes. And look at the difference in how quickly you can build up that texture with a dry brush technique with that cheap, inexpensive chip brush. Now each one of those had just one dip, and you can see right away all of the great texture that that chip brush built up. So now I can also use these chip brushes for adding the base coat, because even if it has a slight texture, I'm gonna fuse it flat anyways with my heat gun or my torch, so that becomes irrelevant that it's going to leave a brush stroke. I'm gonna fuse that all out. And also, if I want to leave great brush strokes later on in my painting, maybe I don't wanna build up a true accretion method texture, but maybe I just want some great brush strokes here and there. The chip brush works great for that. And let's try the softer natural bristle brush. Kind of adding on to the chip brush a little bit, but not as much. And I don't have quite as much control. That wax seems to just kind of suck up in those bristles and dump down, where the chip brush, I find, for me anyways, releases the wax in a more uniform manner and comes out a little bit at a time until the brush dries out. I find that the softer brushes have a little bit more of a struggle with sucking up that wax and absorbing all that wax and then letting it go. I also find that they use more wax than the chip brush, and I find that my waste level is less with the chip brush. That's just my experience with the brushes. However, why would you ask that I would ever use a more expensive soft bristle brush? Soft bristle brushes are wonderful for adding those final layers. So I've built up my layers on my painting. Maybe I have encaustic photography. Maybe I have a photo encaustic piece. Maybe I have an oil stick piece. I have a piece that I'm gonna add my final layer on to protect it. Those soft brushes, soft encaustic brushes are wonderful for that application. They're gonna add that last light layer of wax smoothly, and that is when you don't want a bunch of brush strokes, is when you have to go and fuse over that delicate last layer. You don't want it to move anymore. Your painting is done, it's finished. You don't want anything to move. You want it to stay in place. Those soft bristle brushes that's what they're made for. They're made for a nice smooth application of encaustic medium, that clear coat that goes over everything. Those soft encaustic brushes are perfect for that application. I've also found, because these brushes are so inexpensive, that they also can be cut down to make different sorts of texture. So a lot of times on the long ones or on the little tiny ones, I'll cut them. You can cut them in different shapes. You can cut some long, some short, for all sorts of different fun textures. And a lot of times when I cut them shorter, they can build up that texture even faster. So it's really gonna build up that texture quickly with this short brush because it's stiffer. And you can see how much that's adding in just one more dip. Just one more dip of that wax has built that up significantly by cutting off that cheap chip brush and giving it even a stiffer bristle to apply that texture. So this is just my take on the brushes. Every artist is different. Everyone is drawn to their favorite brush. And this is just what I found works for me. I love to share it in workshops. I love to share all the different things that you can do with these chip brushes, but everything has their place. And there's a place for the more expensive brushes. There's a place for the chip brushes, and both have a valuable place in my studio for different applications. Okay, and one more thing, I wanted to share with you that there is a brand new workshop coming out. It's called Encausticology Home Studies, and I can't share a whole lot yet, but it's coming live soon at the end of the month, and it is a super fun series. I know it's been a while since I've had a new workshop, and so if you've been waiting, here it is. And this is really fun, again, taking it off of the panel and taking it off the board into 3D. I love working with encaustic in three-dimensional forms. The home, the house, the nest, these are all words and phrases that I am instantly drawn to and that are very meaningful for me. And this one is Encausticology Home Studies, and I can give you a little sneak peek, but you have to wait. It'll be available for pre-sale here in the next week. A really quick preview here for Wax on Wednesdays. So there is the quick preview that I can share, but I hope you guys want to come and join me for it. It's going to explore a lot of encaustic techniques off these boards and onto sculptural forms that can be hung or displayed, and a whole lot of techniques that can be built upon, and really concentrating on working on a series. Working on a series is one of my favorite things to share, on how to build a series, how to explore and expand while you're working on that series. I really love sharing that with fellow artists on how to build up your work into a series or a cohesive body of work. So I'm really looking forward to sharing Encausticology Home Studies with you, and I hope you'll join me next week for Wax on Wednesdays. Have fun, guys. See you next week.